This episode of Working in Music Sucks is brought to you by Plugin Alley's weekly recall newsletter. Get tips, tricks, updates on sales, and so much more weekly. You can find a link to sign up in the description of this episode wherever you're listening. Now, let's get to the show. Plugin Alley presents Working in Music Sucks, the show where we talk about what sucks about working in music so you don't have the same problems. I'm your host, John Maciel, and if you're a returning listener, glad to have you back. If you can do us a favor and drop a like if you're watching on YouTube or leave a positive review on iTunes, we'd greatly appreciate it as it helps us get the podcast in front of more people who can benefit from it. And if you're a new listener, so glad to have you here. And in today's episode, my friends, I want to talk about something that I see all the time in music forums. And it's one of those topics that it's tough. It is tough as a creative to answer this because everyone has a different way of doing this. And today's episode, we're talking about time management. And how boring of a topic could I have picked for an episode, right? But I do think it's important because I had to find my own system through the years. I know other friends who have had to find their own systems. Everyone that I know that works at some level professionally within the audio industry has had to figure out their own system for time management. Some are kind of similar, some are not so much, but there are some commonalities to how everyone gets to their system. And in this episode, I wrote down a couple to help you figure out your own system because I know one of the biggest posts I see in forums everywhere in the audio world, anyone aspiring to do music, is how do you find time to do music if you're working 9 to 5 and you're exhausted after work and you just mentally can't do music, something like that along those lines. And it's worded in different ways, but that's the general premise of these types of posts and things that I see online. Now, the first thing that you need to really take into account if you're trying to make more time to do audio is you need to really understand your goal with audio. So if you're just someone who's just trying to do it as a hobby and have fun with it, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, do it when you have time, when you're inspired, and enjoy it. If it's a hobby, it shouldn't be something where you're making time for it. It should just be something where you do it when you have time and it's fun for you. Because if you try to force it when it's a hobby, you're just never going to do it. I personally am the type to where I play my guitar for like 15 minutes every single day right now. And it might just me covering a song or me just riffing, but I've been trying to get into the habit again of playing for 10 to 15 minutes because there are some YouTube videos that I want to do this coming year that require me to get back into fighting shape, I guess you can call it, where I was a guitar player that turned audio engineer. So I stopped playing guitar like I used to. I used to play guitar for like 5 to 8 hours every single day in my early 20s into my mid 20s. Like I was one of those. Oh, actually, I think it started before that. But I was one of those guitar nerds that just played guitar all day. And then once I got into audio, I was like, if I want to get good at this audio thing, I can't do the two because one's going to take up time. Again, time management. So I just put the guitar to the side and just focused on audio engineering. And I was like, one day I'll get back to the guitar. Now, I never stopped like writing or playing, but the amount of time that I gave towards guitar playing went down. And, my skills are still there, but they're not what they used to be. And I don't think it's going to be one of those things where if I really create a strict regimen where I can't get it to where I need it to be ultimately. So right now, just to get into the groove of playing again, I do like 10 to 15 minutes every single day, just either jamming, riffing, a couple of riffs, covers, just something to get my body going. But I make 10 to 15 minutes, and I'm not too hard on myself. It's either 10, 15 minutes in the morning right before I get started for work, or in the evening as soon as I'm done. I need something to like, kind of unplug me for the day. I just riff for 10, 15 minutes and then go downstairs and enjoy the rest of my day and hang out. But it's really important to understand what you're trying to do. So with the guitar, for example, I know that right now 10 to 15 minutes is what I'm just trying to get into the habit of playing. But I do know that I'm going to need to get a little bit more concise on how I practice because of some video concepts that I have for 2023 for the Plugin Alley channel. And to do some of those concepts requires me to be at a certain level of performance. So I know that I'm going to need to put in a little bit more time certain days of the week and I'll do like exercising like an athlete. Okay, today is literally just down picking for 15 minutes. I set up the tempo markers in my DAW and I just down pick and I record it every single day at the tempo changes so I can see my progress throughout the week on if I'm actually getting better or not. Now, if you're trying to do audio and you're like, okay, cool, that's great for like guitar, but how do you figure this type of stuff for audio out? I am a big proponent of what is your weakness and how and what material will help you get better at that weakness. So if you're someone, let's start off simple, which is this is one of the most simple things that pretty much everyone new to audio or some even experience have, and that's finishing a mix in general. When you have no artist or client, you just have multi-tracks that you got them from the internet, but you never actually finish a mix. It turns into my friend Charlie, I think he calls them sandbox mixes or playground mixes. And he's like, yeah, it's that mix where you just constantly go into it, you tinker and play. You never actually finish it though. You just constantly tinker. And he's like, and you actually never get better. You never progress because you're just playing in the sand or you're playing in the playground, whatever the metaphor is that he used. And I always love that metaphor because I was like, so many of my students have this problem where they're striving for like perfection or something and it stops them from getting something done. And the only way to get better at something is to be done with it and move on and realize, okay, that was the best you could do at that point, at that picture in time. That is the best you could do. It's time to move on. So with audio, let's say you want to be a mixer and you're like, my mixes just don't translate. All right, cool. Let's like completely back up. How's your mix prep? Well, I don't really have a mix prep process. Okay, cool. So how about for the next week, all you do is like take 5 of those multi-tracks, start from 0, and give yourself an hour or 2 hours to mix each song each day and figure out what are little things that you do that take too much time while you're mixing that kind of take your brain out of mixer mode. So for example, let's say you have to retune a vocal each and every single time on the multi-tracks that you're using. Well, that's technically a mix prep. How about, you create MIDI for all the drum shells. Okay, cool. That's technically a mix prep. Let's get all these like right brain functioning things that are utilizing the technical side of your brain. Let's break those down. So now that it's all mix prep. So now like, okay, I need to get better at my mix prep process. Like what are things that I like done in my mixes? Do I like fades in certain spots? Do I like really hard gaps and cuts on my guitars with fades? So like I don't use gates. They're more choppy sounding for like, gent style music. Really figuring out your style in the mix prep is going to help you so that when it's time to mix, you're like, well, Mondays I do mix prep and then Tuesday through Friday is when I mix because I already took care of it on Monday for the rest of the week. And now you can focus on the next thing you're mixing because you've got the mix prep stage. Okay, my mixes, they don't feel too great. I don't know what it is. How's your balancing? Actually, I could use work. Cool. The following week, you do your mix prep, and then all you do is just spend an hour balancing the track. As weird and boring as that sounds, just sitting there and just like listening to the nuances and moving the faders and really getting a feel for each song every single day. You print those out, and then you come back to them the following week and like, listen, okay, this balance mix sounds okay here. I want to change the balance here. And all of a sudden you're like, let me practice with automation and automating the faders for these certain parts where I want the balance to change a little bit. Then, what do you need? Well, some things are masking other things. Cool. That's a weakness of yours. You need to develop your ears. Let's like get some EQs out. But you break it down to the things you are not necessarily strong in and strong at, and you work from there. You build from the bottom up as opposed to getting to the sexy part, which is like the whole mix, the mastering chain. Like those are all the things we want to get to right away. The thing is, if you're not focusing on the right thing when you're making time for stuff, you're not going to get any progress done. Like if all you're doing is importing multi-tracks, throwing a mastering chain, and then, trying to balance things, and then you take it to your car and you're like, oh, it's just not translating. It doesn't sound good. Well, yeah, you're not spending your time wisely building the foundation you need to build so that when you do put in time towards the thing that you want to do full time or that you love doing, it's going to show. And also finding the time when your brain is ready to do those things. So like mix prep for me, for instance, to slow down a little bit, there's a book from an author named Daniel Pink called When that really opened my eyes and kind of made true of some things I was figuring out on my own. But a lot of creatives are what I call, or what people know as night owls. Like in LA, it was very common for people to start their day like at 1 in the afternoon, like right after lunch. They're ready to go to the studio and work. And then they would work until late into like 2, 3 in the morning, go to bed really late, and do the whole thing again. I've never been a night owl. I hate it, but I'm an early riser. Like I'm up by like around 6 a.m. every single day, whether I want to be or not. I have a pet, and my little buddy Oliver, he always wants to get up early in the morning. So I'm up by like 6 o'clock at the latest. And, I am most productive between 9 and roughly 1 or 2 o'clock. So I know that for the creative aspect of anything I need to do, that's my window of doing the creative stuff. Like I have to do it between that window. If I don't, it's just going to be shit. I already understand that. So this book is really helpful in helping you determine like when is your most optimal time for creative and things of that nature, and how do you build a system to help you? Because you might be working full time. You're like, well, that's great, but the time I'm most creative is while I'm at work. Cool, but you have the weekends, right? So you can learn to like, okay, Monday through Friday, I just mix prep like 10 songs. Like every day is just mix prep. It's all technical side of my brain. I am not using the creative juices. It's just like all the mind numbing work. So then between 10 and 2 on like, let's say Saturday and Sunday, you're like, I'm going to mix for like 4 or 5 hours. That's it. And I want to mix those 10 songs within 2 days. So each day, like you do one mix, you build a template out, and then you go add that template to the next song, tweak things from there. But you're challenging yourself to get things done sooner, and then really seeing like, okay, during this week, I'm listening to playback and I need to work on this, 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 and this, and this. So you know by the following week what you need to work on. And it might seem like such a slow journey, but this is what's going to ultimately make you a better mixer or a better audio engineer. Do you need work on tuning vocals? As cringe as this sounds, make a cover and record your own vocals and learn to tune vocals, tuning your vocal. Like if you're not a singer and you can make your vocal sound decent from tuning and learning to hear the notes, you're going to be so much better than when it's time to record a client or an artist or a band, because your ears are being developed as you're doing these skills and you're practicing the right skills and you're making time for it, working on the things that you're not necessarily strong in. Everyone wants to make time and work on the things that they're great at, but that's not going to make you a better mixer, an audio engineer. It's developing the skills that you're weaker at to get to a comfortable level. You don't need to make them expert level, but you just need them to a strong enough level to where everything else benefits from how strong you've made these base fundamentals. And there's a book called Atomic Habits from an author named James Clear. I'll leave affiliate link to both of these books in the description. So if you want to check them out, you can. And if you pick them up, it helps support the channel. But the premise of the book is there's 2 ways of thinking about building like healthy habits. One is you just want to get 1% better each and every single day. And by making time, you will do that. But also create a system that's very simple to follow, because everyone thinks like jumping into making time, you want to like, I need to give like an hour. No, you can like, how much time can you actually give? Maybe you have a family, but using that time wisely. So it's like, I get home from work, and the whole premise of this other thing from Atomic Habits is like, after X, I will do X. And it can be something small. So where it's like, after I get home from work, I greet my family. After I greet my family, I see if anything needs to be done. After I see anything needs to be done, I get that done or make note of when to get that done. After that, spend an hour with the kids. After spending an hour with the kids, help with dinner. Like you basically make a list of everything that needs to get done. And you're making these simple habits of like things that need to get done before you can get to your thing. It's like, kids are in bed. I have 10, 15 minutes to analyze a mix or bounce a mix or or maybe 30 minutes, whatever you and your significant other or you yourself have. But you build a system to where it's like, after I accomplish this thing, that's when I work on my thing. And you just have to stay true to that. And staying true to that is going to help keep promises to yourself. That's going to build your confidence and ultimately is going to help with the time that you do have. Now, another couple of things that have helped me personally that I have written down here are how to track all this stuff. So, for instance, I had my audio career and I was helping multiple producers at the same time. So the way I kept track of all that is I used Apple Notes, and I was just like, this needs to get done. Like I created like a checklist. My life was very simple then, so I could use something like that. And then when I started working for other companies and producers, I needed a project management system like ClickUp that I absolutely love. And other people use things like Monday and Asana. I personally have always liked ClickUp, but you can basically create like spaces, and in those spaces you can create like, okay, studio time with Bo, coaching calls. You can create like a folder for each type of event, and then put those events each day in the time slot within this project management. And then you can look at an overview, so you can see your month in a calendar view and kind of see everything that needs to get done in like a task form. And seeing things in task form is how I operate the best, because I can just, if someone tells me to do something between this and this time, it's not getting done. My brain automatically says, no, screw you, F you. And if I do it to myself, it never gets done, because working at a job for so long, I hate it. I absolutely hate the idea of someone telling, like, if someone says, hey, get this done tomorrow, and as long as I know I have all amenity to get it done whenever I can, I will literally get it done between, like, let's say 10 and 11. But if someone were to tell me, hey, between 10 and 11, I need you to get this done, I'm like, F off. Like, I'm not doing it. Like, my brain automatically says, nah, you told me what to do at what time. So my brain, I already know that my personality type is like, you cannot tell me what time to do things, but if you ask me to do things at a time, I will have it done promptly, because I want to be left alone and I want to get done. But if you tell me something needs to be done by a certain time, I immediately am like, nah, F you. But yeah, so I do better with like tasks and deadlines as opposed to like time management project type stuff, where that's my personality. Other people need to know a specific time, and then they'll focus, which is, totally fine for them. And they need to be, if you're someone like that, it's like, well, no, I need the time. Like I like knowing that between 10 and 11, then that's going to work for you. That's great. But that's what we're talking about here. We're trying to learn a system that's going to work for you. And if you're in a band or you're in a studio and you work with multiple people, you need to figure out what works for them. You need to also figure out what, when are they most, capable of doing the job that you need them to get done. Now, with the productivity system or the project management system that I have going on, another thing that I like about it, and I kind of hinted at it, was like the calendar view. Like, I'm a huge calendar person. If it's on my calendar, it exists. If it's not on my calendar, I will forget about it. So like, I have reminders on my iPhone for things that need to happen every week, every 2 weeks. Anything that's a repetitive thing, I just go into Apple phone and I just put in reminders, and it pops up on I get an alert, and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do this, I need to do that. And it shows up on my calendar as well, because if it exists in my calendar, it exists. If it's not in my calendar, I will 100% forget about it. And if to me, I'm like, if it's not in my calendar, it's not important. That's the way I view everything. So whenever family events are happening, anything like that, I'm like, if it's not on my calendar, it's not in my mind, it's not happening. And I don't keep track of days or anything like that. It's like, I literally wake up and I'm like, oh yeah, today's Wednesday, I have to get this done. Oh yeah, today's Friday, I have to get this done. I literally wake up and I just knock out tasks that I need to get done, and then I move on to my next day. And that's literally how I learned. I just learned from working a certain way that, oh, I am a task type person. And as long as I know that a project's due at a certain time and I have this amount of time to get done, I'll just knock it out. Whereas I do have friends that, they're not calendar people. They like have like an email chain. So like every day before bed, they schedule an email in Google, Gmail. You can schedule emails, and they'll schedule an email to themselves of everything that needs to get done. And every morning they get that email, they look at everything that needs to get done, they put that in a notebook on a to-do list, and they just slowly knock out all those things, and they have to write it on paper. And that's the way they get things done. You might be that type of personality, and that's totally okay. But you got to figure out a system that works for you and how you're going to hold yourself accountable and knock things out. And your system is for you. You cannot expect other people to follow your system. So if you're trying to hire freelancers or outsource things in your studio to other people, you need to also learn how they operate, figure out how to create your system to work within their system so that you can get the best out of them. Because whenever anyone's tried to force me into their system, it never works. So I'm always like, okay, what is your system? How do you process things so that I can create a process with your process, with mine in mind and yours in mind? And there's a way to form these things because, there's really, if you, at the end of the day, there's like so many different ways with like a project management. That's why I love that's why I like ClickUp. There's so many different ways people do things. And with a project management system like that, you can create a task and put everything in the task. And then when you submit it, it will send an email to someone. So it's like, cool. That's how you get stuff done. I can create that type of system to work, or I can create an email system or copy and paste something. But ultimately, you need to find what's going to work for you so you can stay accountable to it. So you work on the things that you want to work on to take you to the place that you want to be at. Otherwise, if you're just constantly trying to just like wing it, nothing's ever going to get done and you're never going to move the needle. So keep it in mind. I really highly recommend you check out those books. Maybe if you're looking for like a cool notebook, you can get a regular standard notebook. There's also a notebook called the Focus Notebook that a lot of people like. There's bullet journals. There's apps like Notion where you can like create your own journal and also like a to-do list, things like that. There's Apple Notes if you're on Apple. There's reminders on Apple. So I would say experiment with kind of everything and kind of find the one that you naturally lean towards, that to you, you're like, oh, this is super easy for me to do. Like if you're just a simple Apple Calendar person or Google Calendar person and you just keep notes in the calendar. So it's like you create events whenever you need to, and then you just leave notes of everything that needs to happen within that calendar event. That works too. I've worked with plenty of people that's how they operate. And if someone else is involved, they just do a Google Calendar invite and invite whoever else is involved, so they don't even have to think about it. They're like, okay, it's cool, it's done. It's like, I don't have to think about anything else. So that's my rant on time management. Hopefully you found this episode helpful and it will inspire you to go and find your own system that helps you find what works for you to create the time so you can actually achieve the things that you want to achieve, because you can do it. I would very much caution asking other people in an open forum like what they're doing, because everyone has different personality types. You've really got to take everything they say with a grain of salt and figure out what works for you. Are you actually like, what's actually going to move the needle, and trying to implement that? And this is something that could take you months or years. Like my system took me years to figure out, and it was trying, experimenting with different things. I would stick to something for 6 months and then it would all come crashing down. And I'd be like, oh man, it is time to like change something up, because this isn't sustainable for my personality type, or, I conform to someone else's workflow, but it's not, how I want to work. So you got to keep all that stuff in mind. Don't be hard on yourself while you're trying to figure out this process. This could take you years to figure out, but when you get to that point where you kind of know how you operate, nothing gets in your way, because you're like, oh no, I know how to make time for this, this, and this, and this. I know how to balance everything out. Like, it's going to be great. So that's it for this episode. Hope you found it helpful. If you did, please share it with a friend that might also find some value in this podcast. We'd greatly appreciate it. And if you'd like to keep this conversation going, you can find a link to the Plugin Alley Discord server in the description wherever you're listening. And until next time, remember, working in music sucks, but with what we talked about in this episode, doesn't have to. Until next time, friends.